Hey, here's the second part of the video notes for 13.2. So we were just talking about degrees versus radians. So now I want to fill in this table as well as label this picture so that we know excuse me, what each of these are equally. So if we're going to start here at x, degrees and radians are going to be the exact same. 0 degrees is the same thing as 0 radians. Oh, I'm going to have a problem with this, aren't I? Yeah. Bear with me while I figure out tech. Alright, 0 degrees, 0 radians. Then we just said that 90 degrees is the same thing as pi over 2 radians. So let's take that information and plug it in. This makes sense because we know that 180 degrees, why will it not let me move this? There we go. If 180 degrees is exactly pi radians, well then half of 180 is 90, and half of pi is pi halves. To get to 270, that's the same thing as 90 plus 180. So in radians, if we do pi halves plus pi, we're technically going to have, I'm going to copy this so I don't have to remake the pi symbol. We're going to have 3 pi halves. I'll show you why this works in just a minute here. So let's actually copy these things over. 0, same thing in degrees as it is in radians. We've got pi over here hanging out at 180. It makes sense that half of that would be pi halves. So if we just add these up to get over to 270, we're going to have pi halves plus pi halves, so 1/2 pi plus 1/2 pi is a full pi. A full pi plus another pi halves is going to be our 3 pi halves. It's 3 90-degree sections, so 3 of these pieces put together. And then we know always that 360 is going to be that 2 pi. Just like that. Alright, those are the big ones to know. You can also label this piece, if you would like to, as 2 pi. I don't know why that looks that way, sorry about that. So now we want to talk about changing degree measures to radian measures. Some of you do have calculators that will allow you to do this. You also need to know how to do it by hand and to show your work if I ask. So, in order to change degree measures to radian measures, we are going to want to cancel our degree measures. And we're going to do this, I'm going to scroll in here, by multiplying, ooh, it's still scrolling. Sorry, Smartboard is being very particular today. It clearly did not want to come off of Christmas break just like the rest of us. Alright, we're going to multiply this by pi over 180. Now, why do we do this? Well, notice, we didn't start out with a pi in our answer. We did start out with degrees. But we want to end up in radians, which has pi, not degrees. So when I do this, I notice my 2 degree symbols are going to cancel out. A degree divided by a degree cancels. And I'm left with pi. Then I can just simplify this. What is 140 over 180? Well, that's 7 over 9. And then we just keep the pi on top. So 7 pi over 9. Why do we like this answer? Well, if we're going from degrees, we want to start out with the degree measure. We want to end with pi. Did we start with a degree? Yes. Did we end with any degrees? No, so we know we're not in degrees anymore. And that little pi symbol is kind of like our label that tells us we're in radians. So let's look at this again. If we, well, let me scroll a little bit more. Yeah. Again, I start out in degrees. I want to multiply by that pi over 180, because what that does is it cancels out my degree symbol and it adds my radian symbol, adds that pi. So multiply by pi over 180. When I do this, I simplify, I cancel out my little degree symbols. That's why I have to put a degree symbol so I can cancel it out. I'm going to reduce negative 860 over 180. It's going to be negative 43 over 9. Again, keep that pi symbol so that we know we're in radians at the end of the day. And then put it over 9. And that is your final answer. No degree symbols, but it has a pi, so we know we went to radians. All right, I'm going to let you do that last one on your own, and I'm just going to stop. You can pause the video if you want to try it without seeing the answer. But once you have tried it, you should get 20 pi over 3. And I could be really technical and ask you to put radians behind each of these, or have you write rads so that you have told me you're in radians. This doesn't matter as much to me. If you want to do it for your own record keeping, that's fine. I'm not going to be a real stickler on that. All right, now that we're able to change from degrees to radians, we also need to be able to go from radians to degrees. Well, how do we do that? If we multiplied by pi over 180 to go from degrees to radians, it only makes sense that now we're going to multiply by 180 over pi to go in the opposite direction. Why do we do this? Well, the same way that our other method canceled out our degree and left us with a pi, this one, if we divide pi by pi, it's going to leave us with no pi. Sad, I know. But it is going to leave us with degrees. So now I just have to simplify this fraction. Negative 3 times 180 divided by 5 is going to end up being negative 108 degrees. Just like that. I know my handwriting's a little messy. Same thing though. If I want to get rid of my pi, I need to put it on the bottom where it will cancel out. So I multiply, by 180 over pi. This cancels out, and I'm left with my degree measure. When I simplify this, I end up getting 660 degrees. Now this last one's a little tricky. It's just 1 radian, but we treat it the exact same way that we treated these. If I want to go from radians to degrees, I still just have to multiply by 180 over pi. Now, this seems a little tricky because the pi doesn't cancel out like we'd like it to. We're left with a degree measure and pi. But ultimately, it's still just a fraction and still is just an approximation. So if we approximate this, we get that 1 radian is equal to approximately 57.3 degrees. So even though it doesn't start out with a pi, even though it starts out with this little label, that is okay. The method stays the same. We still multiply by 180 over pi. All right, that is the end of the video. Please go work on your homework.